Welcome everybody to, it's an interesting title, Get 15 Pounds Healthier in 15 Weeks. And I think we also advertise it as Get 16 Pounds Healthier in 16 Weeks. I like that more round number. 4 weeks per month, right? Give yourself 4 months. You know, this is a topic that is so in such demand. And people have heard a lot of things about how to get the ideal body, the weight that they want. And so much is concentrated on weight. And so tonight what I want to review with you is not just the successes I've had with other folks that have followed my recommendations, but some new leading edge material as well that I'm incorporating into the practice. So I wanted you guys to be the first that I'm going to share it with tonight. So I want to promise you that tonight, the information we're going to go over, it's not just going to be good information, it's going to be transformative. Wait till you see. So I'm so excited about this. So let's jump right in. And the first question we want to turn this on. Good. This is going to work. We're going to do it the old-fashioned way. I want to tell you about Donna. So Donna, maybe you've heard of her before because I've mentioned her oftentimes in different testimonials that I give about just the success in my practice with the protocols that I use. Now, Donna came to me because she had low back pain and a knee problem and all kinds of things. But what was really significant was that after a year of being under care, she lost 60 pounds and 40 inches. So talk about transformation when she came in just to get some help for her low back. And all she did was come into the practice. We did our exam the way we did it with every one of you. We found out that we could help. We gave her recommendations, and she followed the recommendations. So that's the key, is following the recommendations. So tonight you'll have the opportunity to possibly initiate an even greater level of transformation in your lives if you decide to act on it. That's what it comes down to. So just watch the information that comes through that you're thinking, that's something that sounds good to me. That resonates with me. That's something that I want to do. And then you'll get those inclinations of what's the best next step for you. Okay? Sound good? All right, so the first question that I want to ask you when we start tonight is, what is your objective for being here tonight? Everybody comes with different reasons. The topic weight kind of carries a lot of different incentives for people. So for some people, they want to lose weight because that's kind of the token way of how we talk about having a healthier body, an ideal body. So lose weight. Other people know that obesity and weight is related to diseases, so they actually want to take it a step further and they want to avoid diseases. Some people are looking for, I just want to be functioning at a higher level, so I'm looking for a healthier weight so that my performance is better, so I'm faster, stronger, and other ways of having excellent capacity, excellent function, so you have the best life possible. And so really that comes down to creating optimal health. So although the topic is about weight, really, let's be real about this, that if you lost weight, the token pounds, and you were still as sick as ever, and your function still wasn't there, and your quality of life still wasn't there, then we didn't really hit it, did we? If you were miserable, you lost weight and you were miserable, then that wouldn't be it, would it? So if you associate losing weight with also moving towards optimal health, then that's what we're looking for, because there are very unhealthy ways to lose weight that can make you quite sick. So can we all agree that what we're looking for is to be healthier here? Okay, so let's dive in and let's look at, when we talk about creating optimal health, what exactly is optimal health? Well, let's define it. So my definition of optimal health is, does anybody remember my 3-word definition of optimal health? Health is optimal cell function. Optimal cell function, that is what health is, right? So if we're looking at optimal health, we want to be able to measure that. How many people know somebody that seemed to be the picture of health? Next thing you know, they got diagnosed with some severe chronic illness. A scary one too, right? We've all heard that. Picture of health, next thing you know, wow, what happened to that guy? So it's not just about how you feel or even about how you look, it's how you function. So if we look at improving function and actually measuring the biomarkers, that's going to be a way to tell whether we're getting healthier as we're getting that ideal body. Increasing your performance, that's something you can measure. Can I do things I couldn't do before? Can I do them better, faster, stronger, more robustness, more resilience? And then, of course, do I look good naked? Right? Isn't that the real thing when we talk about our ideal body? That's the best measure, right? Is our appearance, right? And so we want to look good, feel great, and function better. That's the key to it. Now, I do want to say something about that idea of looking good. In our culture, we have some interesting ideas. And so I saw a poster that said that skinny is the new sexy. And I thought, oh, gosh, how disempowering that is for our youth to have skinny be the new sexy. And so I want to transform that into healthy is the new sexy. That being robust, emanating health, that's really the thing that would be most attractive. And if we look at just in our ancient days, the things that would attract mates would be that strength and robustness, that health, that ways that we measure health. All right, so I'm going to redefine it as healthy is the new sexy. Let's look at some brutal facts about weight and obesity. First off, we know that, of course, we can equate it to poor diet, inadequate physical activity. But the result of that is that downstream, there are so many chronic concerns that we associate with obesity. And so that would include such things as hypertension, high blood pressure, concerns about fats, dyslipidemia, cholesterol, that kind of thing, diabetes. And there are even more cardiovascular consequences besides those three named ones. And what people often miss is they start to just address the symptoms. Okay, now it's time to get on the blood pressure medication, the statin drugs, the diabetes medications, right? Those are the downstream things, and we start to focus on that. But really, we're not getting to the cause of those things, are we? And so let's recognize another brutal fact, that obesity that is associated with those poor lifestyle choices oftentimes include exposures to chemical carcinogens, and that physical inactivity as well, the diet, all those things together start to contribute to cancer. So we see relationships between our poor lifestyle choices, our weight, and even things like cancer. And then, of course, diabetes is part of that picture too, because oftentimes the diet choices that we're making are the ones that are creating this metabolic concern, metabolic disease. And so we know that 90% of individuals with type 2 diabetes are overweight. We know that there's a relationship there. So if we look at what's downstream from obesity, it's heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Those are the downstream things. And so we oftentimes, again, start to put our attention on the downstream things when we really need to just go back upstream a bit and recognize that although we've normalized bigger and bigger weight, I don't know if anybody goes clothes shopping, but I used to be a classic size, and now I go in and I'm like 6 sizes smaller, but I haven't changed, right? It's how we're just changing our definitions of things and normalizing it. But let's get real about this, that fat means sick. Let's just say that, like political correctness or not, I just want to say what's true, because if we don't recognize that, then we don't address it. So let's just recognize that what people are doing is not working. Is obesity going up or down in our culture? Up. And which population is it going up the fastest in? In kids, right? Kids run around, play, lots of physical activity. How can that be that it's going up so fast in our kids, right? There's a problem, and what we're doing is not working. So fat is a symptom. It's a symptom. And remember that our whole series here of lectures and workshops that we're doing throughout the year, we call them the Body Signals Program, because we're addressing very particular symptoms that people have concerns about, but we're reframing them and recognizing that these symptoms are body signals. And if we can learn to read our body signals, we can start to do something about what's causing it. So the symptoms of the body signals, it's your body's way of asking for help. The question is, are you listening? Do you understand how to read the body signals? That's important. So if we look at the symptom, the signal that fat tells us, what it tells us is that we have a chronic hormone imbalance. That's what's going on when we have fat, when it's not going away. When we have weight loss resistance is another thing. Like people that have tried and tried to lose weight, and they just can't do it. They're following all the instructions, and it's just not happening, right? Anybody here know anybody that has as a concern, right? So what we know is that adiposity, extra body fat, is a symptom of chronic hormone imbalance. So the hormones and the enzymes are what regulate our fat storage. That's the key. If we have a lot of storage of fat, what does that in our body? It's the hormones and the enzymes that do that. So we have to regain hormone balance through specific lifestyle changes and choices that will then directly impact that hormone balance if we ever wish to conquer weight and health issues associated with weight. So there's a perfect storm that happens in our culture. And remember, our culture was engineered to be unnaturally unhealthy, right? If we are living by default, meaning if we're living without making conscious choices, then we are on the path to that state of chronic health and chronic illness, right? So the perfect storm is first that there are toxic and deficient food choices that we're making. And it's the media, every commercial that tells us what's healthy. Don't believe it, right? All the marketing that's out there, they're trying to promote that their product is healthy so that you eat it. But it's filled with toxic and deficient food choices. Then we couple that with energy imbalances. So that's a sedentary lifestyle and excessive calories. So too little movement or too much calories going in. If we take that and then we add to that the environmental toxins that we're exposed to. So ones that come through food, but ones that come from other sources as well, from personal care products, from medications, from vaccines, from pollution, from exhaust, right? Cleaners, like all of these things. New carpets that are off-gassing, right? All these different environmental toxins. And then we add chronic social stress. Anybody here have stress in their life, right? Experience that. And then you add the lack of sleep and the chronic exhaustion. And all of that, the result is weight loss resistance. Weight loss resistance. So what are people told is all they have to do? You just have to exercise more. You just have to eat less, right? So there are some myths that are out there that are really not only disempowering people, because then they feel like failures because it's not working, but it's getting them sicker and sicker. So weight loss resistance is very much linked to inflammation in the body. Has anybody heard that overweight fat that is linked to inflammation? Not everybody. It's a more and more common association that people are starting to understand. And we do find that those two things are linked. But we're going to look at this in a very specific way. And I'm going to bring you right along here at what the latest cutting edge science is telling us. Because there is a gap between what the expert scientists really know and how they would apply their research and what the conventional protocols are on how to address weight. There's a big gap. So we're going to dive right in and close that gap tonight. So the three-legged stool of weight loss, resistance, and inflammation, the three things that are important are your gut health, your microbiome, all the healthy bugs in your gut, how healthy that is, the DNA that you have, and how it is expressing itself, which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off, and then the stressors that we're under. Those three things are the three-legged stool of why we get people, so many people, with weight loss resistance and inflammation. And so we're going to go into the details of, well, how do we fix these things? So we need to learn how to heal and seal the gut. We need to make that gut really strong and robust and healthy. We need to fix the cell itself. So inflammation, one kind of inflammation would be, oh, I sprained my ankle and it's swollen, I have some inflammation there. But when we talk about chronic inflammation in the body, we need to look all the way down to the cell level. And then we need to address the stresses that we're under. And we need to do that. We can't avoid that. We can't ignore that. We have to be addressing that as well. So if we're not doing all three of these things, we're going to see failure after failure after failure because they're all working synergistically together. Now I want to pause for a moment because I want to just grab a sheet of paper because I'm going to draw something so you really understand them. Marissa, could you just grab the sheet of paper in the back office right now, thanks. And also a marker to draw with. Okay. So weight loss, resistance, and inflammation, healing and sealing the gut. So check this out. I want to explain this picture. You see quite an obese rat here, and then you see a normal-sized mouse here. This mouse actually genetically is bred to be obese. And what they did is they took the gut flora of the non-genetically obese mouse and they put it into the obese mouse, and guess what happened? It became normal in weight. So it's genetically bred to be obese. It's genetically bred that way. So they can have lots of mice available when they want to do experiments and learn about obesity. They get these mice. But then they did this study and they took the gut flora in the normal sized mouse and put it in the genetically obese mouse, and it lost weight. That's important information, isn't it? Because we have some myths, some ideas about genes, don't we? That, oh, well, genetic, well, nothing you can do about that, right? Don't we have that myth, that association? So that's great information for us. So if we can get the gut healthy, we literally can start to turn dysfunctional genes off, disease-causing genes off, obesity-linked genes off, and turn on the healthy longevity genes. That's great news, isn't it? We also need to fix the cell. So I want you to really understand the cell. So I'm gonna draw this. And those of you that are taking notes, you might want to just draw it on with me just so you can grasp it. All right. So I'm gonna stand over here. Okay. So first off, we have a cell. It's a pretty good cell. Okay? The cell has a cell membrane. And all the interactions that happen in our body happen at the interface of that cell membrane. So if we have a hormone in our body, like a thyroid hormone, in order for that thyroid hormone to influence that cell's function, it has to come up to the membrane where there's a receptor site for it. And then that receptor site is like an entranceway where it lets it in. And now that thyroid hormone can get inside the cell. And in the nucleus of the cell where there's the DNA, did I do that right, upside down? Right? It can then influence the DNA, and the DNA is going to tell that cell how it's going to function, what it's going to be producing and not producing, and so on. And then we also have something called the mitochondria, which is our energy factory, and the ATP is our energy. And so that also could be affected by hormones. So there might be another hormone called insulin, and that might have an effect on the cell. It has to go through that receptor site, through the membrane, and then have an effect on how that cell's going to function. We have another one that might be called leptin. That's another hormone that's important as far as weight goes and diet and appetite and all of that. So all these hormones, vitamin D would be another one that would interact with the receptor and then have an impact on the cell. So that's how the functions of the cell work, is it has to all interface through the membrane of the cell. Now what happens is when we have inflammation, the cell membrane gets inflamed. And when the cell membrane gets inflamed, now it kind of gums up these receptor sites. And now those hormones, they're knocking at the door, but they're not getting in. And if they're not getting in, they can no longer have an impact on how that cell is going to function. So we often hear of one of the solutions about weight is hormone therapy, right? We know people that have concerns about thyroid, and that might be linked to overweight. I got a low thyroid, and I'm sluggish, and I'm overweight, right? There's some classic ideas there. We might have leptin resistance. We might have insulin resistance. Well, what is that resistance? What does that mean? It means that it can't get in to the cell. And so you can try to get more and more and more there, and it just can't get in. Let me ask you something. If you went to go and pump gas into your car, right, you're pumping it in, and then the there's something that's blocking it, would it help to splash the gasoline all over the car? Right? Just can we keep just dumping more and more all around it? Is that going to work? No, it has to get inside, right? Anybody here have kids? Okay, do you remember when the kids were little and they said, Mama, 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 and you're busy, maybe you have more than one kid, right? You're busy, Mama, Mama, and then the next thing you know, Mama, right? The kid starts to yell, right? And after a while, when those kids are yelling and yelling and yelling, it gets your attention at first, but then when they keep yelling and yelling, you just start to shut down. And the same thing happens to the kids. When you yell at the kids, at first it works, but then after a while, it doesn't even work anymore, right? So when we have hormone therapy, but it's not even getting into the cell, we can keep dumping more and more in, but it's not going to help. So hormone therapy often works in the beginning, but then after a while, it doesn't work so well. Because the problem is not enough hormones. The problem is that it can't get into the cell. There's a resistance, we call that. So when we talk about weight loss resistance, think cell membrane inflammation, the inflammation can't get in so that the cell can just do its job the right way. Now, what else happens when the inflammation gums up the membrane is that when we are functioning, when the inside of our cell is functioning, like when it is burning up fuel, that fuel creates toxins. That fuel in and of itself creates toxins. Like if you have a fire in your fireplace, but you don't have a chimney, what's going to happen to all that smoke? All in the house. Not a good idea, right? So if the smoke can't get out, if the toxins can't get out, then they build up in the cell even more. And that can start to change the DNA as well. Is this starting to make sense here? Right? I wanted you to get this depth because it doesn't make sense for me to make recommendations about, oh, you want to lose some weight? You got to heal your gut. I don't get that, right? You need to understand at the cellular level the way I do so you understand what the recommendations are. So this is so important to understand this. And now we understand, okay, we need to start to get the cell healthier. We need to fix the membrane of the cell. We need to stop the assault, the source of things that are creating the inflammation. So there are toxins in the environment that come and create inflammation. So we have to remove the source of those things that are creating the dysfunction. We need to heal the membrane of the cell. We need to fix the energy factory in the cell because that we get lower and lower energy because that's not working right. We need to also get what's called methylation pathways working again. That's where the DNA can be affected. So there's all kinds of things that need to be fixed here. Now once we fix those things, if we have toxins in the cell that need to get out, right, then there's certain ways we want to get them out of the body. So remember, when we talk about detoxing the body, we have, what are our detoxification organs, right? We've got a liver, right? We've got a liver, we've got kidneys. Those are pretty good kidneys. We have lymph. Our lymph nodes are part of that too. And we have our colon, right? And then we get it out into the sewer, right? Out of the body, right? So when we look at this detox pathway, many people, when they think of detoxes, what are they thinking of? A colon cleanse, right? Or kidney flush, or a liver flush, or a liver cleanse, right? So people think of this, or maybe even something to get your lymphatic system cleansing, right? These are downstream. So when we think of detoxing, oftentimes we're thinking of this, but what are we doing to actually detox the cell? That's where we really need to do it, because not only do we have these cells are all over, and if we have unhealthy gut and the liver's not doing its job, then we actually can have, who knows what this is? This is a brain. So when our brain starts to get affected with toxins, we need to detoxify the brain as well. This is where the deeper tissues, where it can really get settled in. So it's a combination of getting these detox pathways working, but then going up and going as far upstream as we can to the cell itself and healing the cell, fixing the cell. Does this make sense? Okay. So I wanted you to actually have the picture there. So now we're going to carry on. We're So how do you know if you're toxic? I think that's an important question to ask, because if you're thinking, well, my cells probably are pretty healthy, I've been living a healthy lifestyle, I don't think I'm toxic, then it wouldn't make sense of why you have dysfunction in your body even at the cellular level. So there are tests that we can do that actually will show whether or not you have toxins. And so we want to be able to evaluate that. And so one of the tests that we can do is this one here. It's called a visual contrast sensitivity test, and it's actually a way to know if you have some neurotoxicity happening. And it's so precise that it can actually identify, does it look like it's more of a nutritional deficiency? Does it look like it's more of a heavy metal toxicity? Is it more biotoxins? Is it pathogens? Is it parasites? It's amazing what we can learn from that test. And that's by looking at how your vision is working with contrasting light. Because that's one of the signs of remember the optic nerve, right? That's nervous system tissue. And when we have brain toxicities or even toxicities deeper in the nervous, the eye is one of the ones that's going to be affected actually fairly quickly. So it's a great test. We also want to look at, is there any cellular inflammation? How do you know? There's actually tests that we can do that can tell us that. And I'll tell you what, just to know whether or not your cells are inflamed, I mean, if this test costs $1,000 to get that information, it would be worth it, because you would then know what's going on, what's the cause, and what do I need to fix. And then you want to monitor your progress as well. So there's a whole program that goes for about 90 days, and so you measure it every month. You're measuring, and you're watching as things evolve, and it's guiding you on what do I need to change, where do I need to go next, what are the nuances that my body needs. So it's fantastic. And then there's actually a very nuanced questionnaire, a neurotoxicity questionnaire that asks all kinds of very specific questions, and by the way you answer those questions of what you're noticing in your body, it tells us, it's an indicator of what types of toxicities you may be having in your body. So when we couple those three together, we can get really accurate information that can direct us on what's the program that this person needs, and what's the path, what's the journey for them, and then how do we measure the progress along the way. So the roadmap then, and this is kind of what I've already talked about here. So we've got the cell up here, and we want to detox the cell through the lymph, and then the toxins in the cell then come out and they go into the lymph, they go into the kidneys. When we detox the brain, the cells in the brain, it goes into the liver into the gut, and then gut out of the body. And so there's three components to this process. And the first is what we call the getting the cell healthy, detoxing and healing the cell itself. The second is getting these detox pathways open and supporting them. And then the third one is to use what are called true binders to remove the toxins. So there are some chelators, there are some approaches that are trying to move toxins through the body, but if they don't get those toxins all the way out of the body, sometimes they'll get as far as the gut, and then we'll reabsorb them. And so we then just recycle them around our body. So they were buried deep in the bones, deep in the brain, deep in the tissue, and then we get them out of the tissue, and then they get cycled back around again. So having true binders that actually do take them right out of the cell, all the way through the system, and then all the way out of the body is another key component to true cellular detox. There are 3 phases that we go through. The first phase is the prep phase. So that's to just get your body ready, so that when we then go to the second phase, the body phase, that's where we actually set up a gradient that pulls and draws the toxins out of the cells itself. And then the brain phase is where we get to the deepest tissue, getting those toxins out. We don't ever go directly to that, because we need to prepare first of all. So it's a first month, second month, third month process. And it's amazing how effective it is if you do it in the right order with the right components. So those 3 phases, again, it's just reinforcing it. The 5 R's of true cellular healing, detox and healing: remove the source of the toxins coming in, regenerate the cell membrane, restore the cellular energy, reduce the cellular inflammation, and then reestablish the methylation pathways. And then, as I said, open and support the detox pathways for the lymph, the kidneys, the liver, and the gut, and then use the binders that really do remove it right out of circulation, so so that you don't have the auto, we call it auto intoxication, when you recycle it back into your body. All right. So the prep phase, again, is to prepare the cells and downstream detox pathways. The body phase is to set up that concentration gradient so that the deeper stores of the heavy metals start to mobilize out of the tissues. I think of it as almost like a vacuum cleaner sucking it out, like we create a pressure or a vacuum, and that pressure gradient is what moves it out. And then finally the brain phase, which is removing the metals from the deepest tissues, and that's actually where the problem lies. So if you don't get to the brain part of it, the deeper tissue part of it, then you don't have the success that you really need of getting those toxins out of the body. And so the magic happens at that brain phase because we have to cross that blood-brain barrier to detox the pituitary and the hypothalamus. So those are the things that regulate your hormones. The pituitary and the hypothalamus, they regulate the hormones. And we have to use the true binders in order to, the ones that are able to actually get right into the cell and then bring them all the way out through the body. And so if you don't remove the causes of the brain inflammation, that's an important part of it as well. And heavy metals tend to be the #1 culprit when we do the research. So we've looked at weight loss, resistance, and inflammation with the gut. We've looked at it with the cell, and now that third leg of the stool is addressing the stress. And now this is not going to be a surprise to you because we've talked about this before, the 3 dimensions of stress that we're under. Physical stresses, chemical stresses, and emotional stresses. And so we want to have our adjustments in rhythm. That's to deal with the physical stresses. And you may remember from the brilliant workshop that subluxations actually create inflammation in the body, and they create stress in the body. The spinal exercises, again, to support your adjustments, so you hold your adjustments. But then that third category is breaking the bad habits. And that's all about how you eat, how you move, and how you think. And so we have to be addressing those stressors as well. And so, the ways that we address how you think, we use the EFT tapping to do that. That's one of the fastest ways to do that. When you think about how we move, we want to move with that burst exertion, with that the panting and sweating, right? And then when we're eating, we want to eat that anti-inflammatory type of diet. And there are some nuances too that we can go into deeper, but that's kind of that overview. So how do we regain control of your hormones? Look what it's all about. It's the food, it's the movement, and it's the stress, and then taking it as far upstream to address the cellular detox level. So food quality is important. And I do want to just unpack this a little bit when we talk about food in general, because there are these 3 aspects that we want to address. So food quality. Now, there's something new in our population that none of us, when we were younger, ever had to deal with, and then no generations before us ever had to deal with, ever. New on the planet. Do you know what that is? GMOs, that's right. And GMOs come with, the reason that they made GMOs, genetically modified organisms, so that they could be resistant and not be destroyed by a pesticide called glyphosate. And then they can just spray that glyphosate all over everything, and the GMO organisms that were altered, they don't die from the glyphosate. But what does that mean is all over those foods? Yeah, the glyphosate, right? They're doing research now and finding that glyphosate actually damages the lining of the gut, opens it up, and creates a leaky gut. And then it creates a leaky brain. So the glyphosate, in combination with the other toxins we're exposed to, is magnifying the results and the impact of these, for example, heavy metals. If we're exposed to mercury. Anybody as a kid ever used mercurochrome?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Mercury.
We put that right on.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. That's mercury. Yeah.
Every time we
Anybody?
remember.
Yeah. Anybody here have amalgam fillings in their mouth or have had mercury right in your mouth? Yep. And then vaccines have had mercury in them as well. So those are 3 major sources of mercury that we're exposed to. What about lead? Leaded gasoline, remember that? If we breathed it in, it got stored. And you know what? The safest place to store it is in our bones. Do you know when you're pregnant, you tend to leach things out of your bones? And guess what they're finding is the amount of lead in the mother, they're finding finding it proportionally in the baby's brains. When they do autopsies of babies' brains, they're finding the amount of lead in their brain is proportional to the amount of lead in the mother's body. So we have these heavy metal exposures, and then we add glyphosate to the mix, and it's magnifying because it's driving these heavy metals deeper and deeper into the brain and into the tissues. So the quality of your food, like, we say, oh, organic, well, it's more expensive. It's worth it, right? Because chronic illness is way more expensive than being healthy, you see? And so sometimes it's hard to make those decisions when you're, watching your pocketbook and you go to the store and, boy, that tomato sure looks pretty over there. I mean, why can't I just get that one? It's cheaper, right? And the reason that you just don't want to do that is because of the glyphosate that's everywhere now. 100% of us have glyphosate in our bodies. All the testing they're doing, we all have it. We can't avoid it. So we need to avoid it as much as possible because it's everywhere already. Yeah. Food quantity. So this is the one that most people think of, like, okay, yeah, I want to lose some weight. Yeah, I better cut back on how much I'm eating. And that does have an impact. But you'll see that depending on what food you're choosing, it actually is the least of the concerns is the quantity. And then the food rhythms, and this actually is a really important piece as well, the rhythms. When are you eating during the day? How long are you spreading your eating out over the day? So if you think of Paleolithic man, like when our genes were set up, right? What was that rhythm of eating then? Well, it was wake up in the morning, and now take a few hours to go find your food for the day. So you didn't eat right away in the morning. And you certainly didn't drive up to a cave window and have someone throw food at you, right? Right? You had to work in order to get your food. And you might go out on a hunt, first exertion, right? Sweat and panting. You go out for the hunt, you get the kill. You're going to eat the brain first. Then you're going to eat the organs. Then you'll eat the flesh. Then you'll suck on the bone marrow. And then you'll probably be vegetarian for a few weeks, a few days, few weeks, until the next kill. So there's a rhythm to how we're eating, that if we can actually respond to that, respect that rhythm, understand and respect that rhythm, our bodies function at such a higher level if we look at that. Our activity levels, we're going to unpack all of these things. So we're going to
Just a quick question. So the rhythm is just every time you turn around, eat your breakfast, eat your breakfast, eat your breakfast.
I know, and there's
Is
research.
that sounds like this is contradicting that.
There's one level of research that says that you should eat your breakfast, and that's because there are people that skip breakfast, but then they binge on crappy food, and they just sabotage what good there might have been from trying to establish a healthier paleo rhythm. So there's definitely a way to do it, but there's something that's called, I can't remember what it's called, but the idea is condensing the number of hours that you're going to eat. So even now, we can go into the bush and observe how do indigenous people that are eating the same ancient diets that they've always eaten, how do they eat? And they pretty much don't eat very much for the whole day, and then at night, they feast. They might eat for 2 or 3 hours, right? And that would be actually a very normal rhythm. So if we can condense the amount of time that we're eating in a day, we have found, the research shows that can actually be very helpful in flipping us into fat burning instead of carb burning. Fat burning versus carb burning, right? Does that make sense to you that if you have too much fat, if you could burn that fat, that's going to be healthier than just burning up what carbs you have and the fat just sits there, right? So that's actually part of the hormone imbalance, is that we keep turning off the fat burning mechanism by the poor choices. If we can learn to turn on that fat burning mechanism, then we're going to just start using up all that fat. So shortening the time that you're eating in a day is one of the ways to get there. Let's see. I want to say one other thing, because I'm not sure I have it otherwise, as far as the food quality and the food choices that we're making. So you remember I gave you that example of the fireplace, and if it's burning and the smoke is filling the room, right? So we have to have a chimney to try and get the debris, the toxins out. What happens happens when you turn the gas on your stove on? It burns really clean, right? It burns really clean. So the difference between a log burning and your propane gas burning, one burns very dirty and one burns very clean. Fat burns clean inside the cell. Carbs burn dirty inside the cell. So if you are a carb burner, it meaning I gotta eat every few hours or I'm in trouble, my blood sugar, I gotta keep my blood sugar regulated. If you're having trouble regulating blood sugar, it's an indication you're a carb burner. And you're just gonna keep burning the carbs and storing the fat. So if you can shift your body over to be a fat burner, then it's less toxic to your cell. And it gives the chance for the cell to start to heal up because we don't keep dumping more and more toxins into the cell, and if there's inflammation in the membrane, then they can't get out. Whereas if we're burning clean fuel, then it has a chance for the membrane to heal up. Right? Is this making sense? So the top 5 dieting lies. Weight problems run in my family. Just eat less and you'll lose weight. Calories are calories. I'll just work it off at the gym. Sleep has nothing to do with it. Right? These are very common myths, so let's unpack each one of these. Weight problems run in my family. The problem is not that weight problems run in your family. The problem is that nobody runs in your family. Right? Nobody's exercising. So if you're making the same poor lifestyle choices, then you can expect to get the same thing because you're going to be turning the same disease-producing genes on as your family did. But if you're making different lifestyle choices, then we're going to see that change. And here's how I'm going to prove it to you that that's true. Genes, environment, lifestyle. So we know that our function in our body is going to be the result of all 3 of these. So we have the genes, the environment, and the lifestyle. And we know that the genes can be turned on and off. And what turns genes on and off? The environment and the lifestyle choices, right? So, genes. This is the obesity trends among U.S. adults 1990, 98, and 2006. So in 1990, you can see we had at the most 10 to 14% of the population in all these states had obesity, right? And then less, and then we didn't even have data on some of the states, right? 1998, you can see, whoa, a lot more percentage of the population obese and even greater and greater, like a lot more states and also higher levels of obesity. And now we see 2006, okay? So between 1990 and 2006, this is what we see happening here. 1990 to 2000, that's about 16 years, right? Got that right? 16 years. Can genes change that fast? In 16 years, we completely change our genetic makeup? No. This is not happening because of genes. No, no, no. Forget it. Why is it happening then?
Hamburger helper.
There you go. It's yes, it's environment and lifestyle, isn't it? Yeah, so let's look at this, right? It's how you eat, move, and think. And we have to look at, remember with the environment, we don't have as much control over our environment. You can't hold your breath when you go outside. You can't change the birth family you were born into if it's dysfunctional, right? But even in these situations, you can still have strategies and choices that you make. And that's what lifestyle is. It's all about choice. So if we can address this piece, we literally can have a change in how our genes are expressing themselves. And so let's also remember that genes and body composition, there's a whole variety that's out there. And an ideal weight could be any of these for any of these people. It's really all about if we're measuring the biomarkers and the function to tell us if it's healthy for these people, right? So this whole idea of skinny is the new sexy, that's a problem because genetically our body compositions are going to be different. So if we want to be 15 pounds healthier, right, that's the key, then part of it is going to be just what our body composition is. Another part is looking at the amount of lean tissue versus fatty tissue. And so recognize that for the optimal ranges, women are going to be a bit higher than men when we look at the percentages. We want to use different biomarkers. So the scale is one of those biomarkers, but it's not the best one to use. The best one, because when you are burning fat and building muscle, fat weighs less than muscle. So if you're building muscle, you might be gaining weight as you're building muscle, right? So you don't want to use the scale as the end-all and be-all. Abdominal measurement is a really important one to look at. So if you have curves healthier way to carry weight than if you're pear-shaped, right? So that abdominal measurement is key. And then just looking at the overall body fat percentages. And again, it's going to be tied into body composition, but we want to get it to that healthy level. Okay, just eat less and you'll lose weight. Just eat less. Just eat less. We've heard that over and over. We've tried that over and over. And so what happens when you eat the same poor food choices but less of them? If you're a carb burner, your body says, whoa, we're going into survival mode. We're going to become more and more efficient here. And so you can try to eat less and less, and your body just gets more and more efficient, because we're in survival mode here. So we're going to just start to shut down things that take a lot of energy just so that we can conserve, because we're in starvation mode is happening, right? So that's the key, is that if we're eating the same poor food choices and we haven't changed the quality and the rhythm and the never mind the quantity of our food, then that's going to be a problem. So it's not just about eating less, it's what you're eating. In fact, we've even found that if you eat the right foods, you could even eat more, but eat less often. So remember, we said condensing the time. So if you were to not eat less, but eat less often, that's a much better strategy than just trying to eat less, grazing through the day, snacking. It's one of the worst ways to try and lose weight is snacking and grazing. Now, sometimes there are transitions that you have to go through where that may be useful just to get your body in a healing mode, and then you can go for it. But ultimately, eating less often is going to be the key.
And you're saying that even eating at night, eating a lot at night is good idea.
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily, especially what your choices are at night. So if you're eating a lot of carbs at night, nope, that's going to mess with the leptin and the ghrelin, which are the two hormones that work synergistically. We're going to cover that in a minute. So it actually is best to not eat a few hours before you sleep. And think of Paleolithic man, right? They would have gotten the kill, eaten for a few hours, then they would have probably been dancing and,
Well, I would have thought they'd be fast asleep.
Maybe not. Anyway, I wasn't there, so we're all guessing about it. But our best guess is that, and if we just extrapolate and look at what's actually happening with hormone function, we find, generally speaking, you want to not eat 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed, ideally. So you're condensing it. So you're eating later and later, and you're finishing eating earlier and earlier, if you've been used to spreading it out through the whole day. Yeah. So food deprivation as a model, I'm just going to eat less, it's torture, right? And you just can't sustain it, and then you start to yo-yo, right? And that's one of the most ineffective ways of dieting, is the yo-yo thing, because it gets worse and worse. You just start adding more and more pounds. Your metabolism will change with food deprivation, and you can either do that in the healthier way of condensing the time, or you can do it in an unhealthy way where you go into survival mode. And once you go into survival mode, you're going to be storing fat. No matter what you put in your body, you're storing that fat, because the body's just saying, oh, it's just starvation. We better store it for trying to last a long time, because I don't see a lot of food around right now, right? It's by design. So what about fasting itself? Fasting is actually, the science is showing fasting is amazing for helping to reset the gut, for helping to reset the hormones. And again, there's different ways that you can fast. And part of this true cellular detox, some of the advanced strategies include guiding you on how to effectively fast. But I just want to blow your minds. Are you ready about this whole fasting idea? Are you ready to have your mind blown? Ready? How long can anybody fast? Water fast. Water fast. No food, just water. A 27-year-old Scotsman, he weighed 456 pounds. He water fasted for 382 days. More than a year. Just water. He lost 276 pounds. He hit his target weight of 180 pounds, and he never gained it back. All his nutritional markers remained normal throughout that year. Right? Like, looking at his blood work and all that. His electrolytes eventually normalized and became stable without supplementation. His depression lifted, his neurotransmitters and hormones all became normal. Everything normalized. Did I blow your mind? Like, oh my gosh, like we would have thought he would be dead. wouldn't we? And if you don't have the fat stores that he had, you wouldn't be able to last that long. But he was targeting a optimum weight, and that weight went along with an optimum body.
You're not gonna ask us to do that, are you?
I will not ask you to do anything, but you may choose to explore what a 7-day water fast would be like. In fact, there's research that shows that once a year, a 7-day water fast resets the gut. Here's what happens when you do a fast like this. Not even like this, even just a 7-day fast. After the first couple of days, that's when everything starts to normalize. So the first couple of days are a hard part. But then everything just starts to normalize, and you actually you lose your hunger, and your energy goes right up. And what it does is it puts stress on your cells. To fast puts stress on your cells. The healthy cells can adapt to that. The unhealthy cells are what are consumed. So our body will actually start to eat up the diseased, unhealthy cells. It's called autophagy. So that's the first thing the body goes after, because it has to get fuel. And the first thing it goes after is all the sick and diseased and bad cells that can't survive. They don't have the robustness to adapt. The healthy cells do. And so it resets so many things. People with allergies to things, you end up eating up your T cells that had those allergy markers that were inappropriate, and you come out of these fasts and people are no longer allergic to different foods and things like that. It's extraordinary. So I just want to open your mind to it. This is not the class to go into the details of it, but I want to open your mind to it of what does the science tell us about this? Fascinating. Calories are calories. Oh, I just have to count the calories, right? That's the most common myth out there. I just have to count the calories. And we know that there are different qualities of food. There are empty calorie foods and nutritiously dense calorie foods, right? Where you get lots of nutrients. And if you eat the empty calorie foods, you're just so hungry because you didn't get any of the nutrients that your body was expecting to get from eating. So then you just want to keep eating more and more and more. You eat that nutrient-dense food, your body says, oh yeah, got it. Satiated. So again, in that perfect hormonal storm, the toxic and deficient foods are a problem. So remember, in the food choices that we have, not what our ancestors had, what we have today, our food choices include foods that are loaded with toxins. And then not only that, they're the empty calorie foods, which when we put those in our body, now we don't have room for the nutritious food. So it blocks out and it creates deficiencies. And if you want to look at how to build a pyramid, right? I talk about the pyramid of this body shape, right? Yeah, this is the recommended diabetes food pyramid. This is the recommended pyramid if you have diabetes, what you should be eating. This is what's recommended. Yeah, look at your faces, right? What do you see as the thing that they want you to eat the most of? Carbs, which burn dirty, don't they? And going to promote inflammation, and they're going to make more and more insulin resistance because the hormones can't get in. Do you see how unbelievably illogical this is, right? So there's a much healthier food pyramid that I would want to show you than this. But this is the standard conventional in our country right now. I like this slide. So if we compare, what did the wild hunter and gatherer, what did they eat? They had high carbohydrates, lots of vegetables and fruits, right? Lots, and mostly vegetables, right? Lots of carbohydrate and tubers and, even some of the starchier foods. That's high carb, low to moderate but good fats, good quality fat, but low to moderate amounts of that fat. High protein, no refined foods, no dairy, no sugar. Right? Can you picture a Paleolithic man? Like, what do they have available to them, right? And then we see the industrialized modern human, tons of high refined carbohydrates, low fat, stay away from the fat, take the fat out of those healthy foods, and now make them low fat or no fat foods and call them healthier, right? That turns them into sugar when you take the fat out of them. And then low protein, like don't eat that red meat, right? And then lots of sugary foods. Oh, everything in moderation. Right? genetically, this is how we were designed. And nowadays, there's more and more and more sugar. If you keep everything in moderation, it means that you're keeping on eating more and more and more sugar, right? It's not, everything in moderation is not a good rule to use. You're just going to sabotage yourself. So the results are in, right? This is a wild giraffe in captivity. This is a wild human in captivity. This is a wild human in the wild. Right? We are wild animals in captivity, right? Driving up and food being thrown in the window at us, right? Do you get that? Right? If we took any wild animal and then put them in captivity and fed them this, we would get that. So poor quality fails, the toxic choices, like the glyphosate, the deficient choices, the empty calories, the unbalanced choices. Even if it's organic sugar, it's still going to affect the hormone balance. And people that are grainitarians, where they're, eat a lot of grains, right? And unfortunately, vegetarians, oftentimes the substitutions from the proteins and the meats, they go to grain versions of it. So it can be troublesome. We've talked about that before, haven't we? So the hormonal impact. Our food choices can affect our insulin and our glucagon. Those are the two hormones that work together for blood sugar regulation, right? So if the insulin resistance is off, the glucagon gets out of balance. So the glucagon is what helps us to burn fat, to take the fat and turn it into something we're going to burn. The insulin is for storing fat. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. Leptin and ghrelin, this is the satiating hormone. This is the hunger hormone. So they work together as well. And those will get thrown out of balance when we're not making the right food choices. And then cortisol is the stress hormone. So when we're stressed, it'll have an impact on these hormones. Insulin, fat storage hormone. So elevated insulin locks you into fat storage mode. So what causes elevated insulin? Our food choices, the sugars and the refined carbohydrates, the fast carbs, and dairy will do that as well, and especially low-fat dairy. It turns it into sugar. Energy imbalances are also what can elevate insulin. So when we have excess calories, too many calories, overeating, that will ramp up our insulin. And if we're not moving enough, that actually increases our insulin as well. What is this glycemic index that people keep talking about? Like, what is that? How do we, when people talk about this is a high glycemic food or not? So the reference is glucose, sugar, pure sugar. And when you eat the sugar, they watch what the blood sugar levels are in your body over 2 hours. So it spikes up and then it comes down. So this would be equivalent to 100%. And then the other foods that they measure, they compare it to this. So for example, lentils have a 30 for its glycemic index. And so over a 2-hour period, it's just measuring that. So what foods are the high glycemic foods? Check it out. It's the cereals, it's all the grains. Pretty much all the grains are what we're seeing here. And even whole wheat bread, it's still pretty high at 69, but not as high as the cereals that are loaded with sugar and everything. Now check this out. Refined sugars, grains, vegetable oils, and dairy, right now they are comprising 70%, 71% of the energy in our food supply, right? So if you look at, this is the amount taken up in our food supply of all of these high carb and inflammatory types of foods. And then the foods that Paleolithic man would have had available is only taking up that amount in our percentage in our diets. So the problem is that these things are displacing those things. Well, every time we eat one of these things, there's less room for eating one of those things. That's what the problem is. And so, with that, if we look at a typical Western diet, it's this type of diet would be virtually unknown in the ancestral human diets. So the bread, cereals, rices, and pastas, the dairy products, the added salt, refined vegetable oils, the refined sugars, except for honey, the fatty meats, and alcohol. And so if we look at just the incidence of obesity, we want to definitely recognize this one. So just check out the years 1960, 70, and then there's right here where this is the kids here that were overweight. And you see it starts to go up here. You know, the 6 to 11-year-olds, the 12 to 19-year-olds. The 20 to 74-year-olds that are obese, right? This is the percentage of the population. And then right here, it starts to go up. People that are overweight but not obese, between 20 and 74 years, that actually has stayed fairly steady. But the obesity level is actually what has been climbing. And so this inflection point right here, don't we want to know what started happening there? What changed in our culture that started to cause this? So check it out. 1800s, we had sucrose in our diet. We had sugar in our diet, but it wasn't very much of our diet. This is when we introduced feedlot-produced meats, CAFO meats, right? Unhealthy meats that were full of inflammation. This is where we introduced more and more refined grains, like the white flour. Look when that happened, 1880s, when we started to introduce that. Here's the refined vegetable oils that were introduced right before the 1900s. That's like the edible oils, the corn oil, the soybean oil, and so on. And then the hydrogenated oils, which made them even worse. But check out what happened right at that inflection point. That was when we introduced high fructose corn syrup.
Okay.
That is the key. So anything that has corn syrup in it, just like you put that in your body, just add some pounds. Add some inflammation, right? Just add it to your cells because that's what's happening. Yeah. And of course, the high fructose corn syrup is probably going to be GMO. So if we advance now, that same high fructose corn syrup that was already bad in the 70s and 80s, like now we're adding glyphosate to that. It's going to be filled with glyphosate, and it's going to be even more destructive to us. So also recognize that sugar, it's an addiction. It literally, it triggers the serotonin and the dopamine, the feel-good hormones, the same way alcohol does. The same parts of the brain light up with not just eating sugar, but thinking about sugar. For people that are addicted to sugar, the same place lights up in the brain as would light up with an alcoholic. And alcoholics know that you can try trading your alcohol addiction for a sugar addiction, but you're still trapped. The only way you really master that is you get rid of both of those addictions. Yeah. And we know that our environment that we're in, right? Oh, I'm going to go to my friend's house. Oh, their friends are loaded with sugar. Or I'm hanging out with these people in this environment. We tend to, oftentimes we'll make poorer food choices based on the environment that we're in. So watch that very closely. Make some smart strategy choices about getting yourself into or out of those environments and what your strategy is going to be if you are going to be in that environment. Relationships oftentimes are loaded with the sugar dynamic, right? So just don't have it in the house. It's so much easier if you just don't even have it in the house, and it's a slippery slope. How many people have seen parents struggle with trying to limit sugar, right? Because the kids are thinking, I get sugar sometimes, I wonder if this is going to be one of those times. How about this? How about this? How about now? How about now, right? Whereas if you just don't have it at all, there's no question about it. The fight goes away. So that's what I recommend because it is such a slippery slope. All right, well, what are the pitfalls of dieting? Drinking calories. So if you're change to water, right? Because if you're drinking fruit juices and any of your things that you're drinking, your body doesn't take it in the same way as eating a meal of something. So that can be a pitfall that sabotages you. Having too much fruit in your diet, also going in that direction. Too much dairy in the diet, being a grainitarian, snacking, going and exercising and say, well, I just exercised so I can eat a lot. Post-exercise binging, sabotage. And then that idea of skipping breakfast, but then having the first food be a poor choice. Or binging. Like, oh, I waited, now I'm going to binge on poor food choices. That's where it's a problem. So not that concentrated. It's called intermittent fasting. That's what they call it, intermittent fasting. So you're intermittently for a few hours fasting, then you're eating. That's what that's called. So the bonfire correct way, in other words, that paleo model. Unlimited vegetables as much as you want, abundantly natural meats, some fruit, nuts, and seeds, limited starch, no sugar. Paleo correct, zone correct, these are different models that are good ones to follow. basically it's part of an overall lifestyle too. So it's not just about the diet, you have to have it as part of the whole lifestyle. So what is paleo? Why paleo? Because our genes dictate what our nutritional needs are. So if we go back to the environment that our genes were set at, that was that Paleolithic environment. Our genes were shaped over time by our environmental experience. And then they haven't changed in 40,000 years. So up until 500 generations ago, that was all humans ate, and they ate the same diet then for 2.5 million years before that. So we want to look at what were we eating 500 generations ago before we started to change it. And there's no evidence of ancestral degenerative disease. So if you go back to Paleolithic times, chronic disease didn't happen. When you died, it was from an acute injury or an acute illness. So it wasn't from chronic illness. And the agricultural revolution just changed all of that. That's what happened 500 generations ago. So what does paleo look like? It's unlimited non-starchy vegetables. Those are the good carbs. No refined grains, which are the bad carbs. Plenty of fruit and berries, relatively high in animal protein. Moderate amounts of good fats. High in fiber. High potassium. Low sodium. And then the alkaline load, so meaning that you're eating foods that were going to keep your body mostly alkaline. Not completely, but mostly. So the load is more alkaline. And then rich in those phytochemicals, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, so nutrient-dense foods. The zone is very similar to the paleo and the food choices. They tend to look at a percentage of your diet. 40% carb, 30% protein, 30% fat. So that's just some of the nuances between them. They use that rule of thirds. So if you look at your plate, a third, a third, a third. Anytime you have your plate, you always want to ask the question, where's the plant, where's the fat, where's the protein? That includes breakfast. Think of our typical classic breakfast foods. Carb, maybe some butter, fat, right? No real protein, no real plants there. You don't see spinach on that plate, right? So every meal you want to ask yourself, when you have a plate in front of you, where's the plant, where's the fat, where's the protein? And ideally, I think this is a better rule of thirds where there's mostly the fruits and vegetables, then the protein, and then the fat. The fat's so much more dense that you don't actually need as much of it as far as portion size, but it will really be satiating and filled with so many good healthy things. So this is what it might look like, right? An omelet. This is what it might look like. An avocado and egg salad, some bacon on top, some tomatoes. Right? You can see the avocado, the tomatoes, the leaves. Okay, almond flour. You can use almond flour and berries. There's plant. There's some fat in there. And there's some protein. And then again, the avocado. You can just see what this looks like. This is the way you want your plate to be looking. Notice that you don't see any bread here. Right?
So where is oatmeal? Real oatmeal?
It has a glycemic impact. So again, let's just say that you are moving in that direction. Oatmeal is going to be a healthier choice than the wheat. Yeah, right. But then once you've got the oatmeal, if you've plateaued, if you're stalled, then you may want to get rid of the oatmeal. So you want to. I'm going to give you a formula to use too that can be helpful. All right, so you get the picture here.
So other than almond flour, like coconut flour?
Oh yeah, there's lots of healthy flours that you can use. Yep. And so the do's are non-starchy vegetables, some fruit, meat, poultry, fish, range-fed, pasture-fed eggs, free-range eggs, natural fats, some nuts and seeds, drinking water. The don'ts. Don't drink that soda juice and alcohol. Watch out for the dairy products. The bad vegetable oils. So don't do those. But the exceptions for vegetable oils are olive oil, avocado, palm, and coconut oils. Other than that, it's the healthy animal fats and oils. Healthy butter from healthy animals. Even lard from healthy animals. The sweeteners, don't do that. The cereals and grains are refined carbs. So the 3 exchanges for you to be thinking about now, this is a great way to go. Just exchange the grains from the glutinous ones to the more ancient grains. Amaranth and spelt and even rye is a healthier grain than wheat. But then rye still has some gluten to it at times. So again, just moving towards what those ancient grains are. Quinoa, for example, too. Sugars, move away from the processed and artificial sweeteners to the natural ones, honey, maple syrup, palm sugar, and stevia is a great choice as well. And then fats, move away from the toxic fats to the healthy fats. So those are the 3 exchanges to be thinking about. Those are the first steps that can be the most useful. Okay, so perfect hormone storm. We've talked about toxic and deficient foods. Sedentary lives. Let's dive deep and unpack that one. Humans living today inherited a genome that was programmed for daily physical activity and a high-fiber diet. Our genes demand that. Daily physical activity and a high-fiber diet. All right, watch. What causes elevated insulin? Remember we said sedentary living, not moving enough. Oh, I'll just work it off at the gym, right? I made some poor choices. I'm going to go work out and burn it off at the gym. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. And here's why. When we look at energy balance, our caloric needs are one of the factors. Then we take those needs and we look at what's going in and what's going out. And then we look at the hormonal impact. This is big, the hormonal impact, because if you've made the wrong choices and you're carb burning, you go to the gym, you burn up all the carbs, but you haven't touched the fat. So you want to support hard training. You want to do, like, for example, that burst exertion type of exercise. That's what will turn you into more fat burning versus the, I'm going to go out for a long run. Now, you can be a fat burner and do the long distance exercise. You can do that. But a lot of people, they'll do their exercise and they won't add the burst exertion to it. And so their ATP, their mitochondria, don't get triggered into getting more and more efficient and then getting triggered into burning more fat. So the fat burning is important. So hard training, lean muscle, but not fat. If we look at genetically, how were we made? Think about Paleolithic man, right? Thrifty genes. Our genes want us to, we're programmed to be lazy because it required so much energy for us to get our food that if we didn't have to expend any more energy, that would be the best choice. So we're programmed to be lazy. Yeah. Like if you were a Paleolithic man and you were doing all that exertion that you had to do to get your food, and then you added another 1 hour run to your day, that would be suicide. Right? We just wouldn't have the energy for that. And so we're programmed to not want to add extra exercise. We're programmed actually to be lazy, to be thrifty. It's also very easy for us to consume calories, to get them in, and then our body just wants to store them. Because in Paleolithic man's time, we would have gone through feasts and famines. And so during the feast, every chance we could, we're going to store because the famine is going to come, right? That springtime fast is going to happen in all the ancient cultures. In every one of them, they would have at least a 1 week fast in all the ancient cultures because they would use up their winter stores and then the springtime foods hadn't grown yet, and there would often be a week-long spring fast that they would all be involved with. So we're very easy to consume calories, but it's actually very difficult to burn them. That's by design because we wouldn't have survived in Paleolithic times if we weren't designed that way. So you can never out-train a lousy diet. Abs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym. So you can't just work out and try and get there to try and make up for poor food choices. It's actually 70% is going to come from the food choices. But you do have to have the activity as well. So the exercise is critical, and the purpose is that it helps to correct the metabolic derangement. So remember, our ancestors, they exerted themselves daily in order to get their food and their water and their protection. And so modern technology means that physical exertion is an option. We don't have to do that. And so we have to actually use it, just like we supplement with nutritional supplements because our food may not have the same nutrient density that it did in Paleolithic times. We need to supplement our lives with exercise. We need to put it into our schedule. And it's very important that we do that for ourselves to be healthy. So rebalancing your hormones with exercise. Only exercise on the days that you eat. Okay, so if you're going to do that fasting piece, right, then you don't have to exercise that day. Exertion is key. So it's not about doing the same walk that you always do and you don't even breathe hard at all. I remember this story of a guy, he was obese. He walked 10 miles a day. And when his coach was trying to figure out what's going on, he walks 10 miles a day and he can't lose any weight. The coach said, okay, well, let's have you just run as fast as you can from this telephone pole to that telephone pole. He couldn't do it because he never had any burst exertion in his exercise. And once he started to add that, the weight just started to come off. So the burst exertion is really important. Moving, sweating, and panting. 30 minutes a day, and if you can't get the 30 minutes or more in a day, do 20 minutes of that high intensity interval training where you're doing it in a very rhythmic way of burst, rest, condense it. And you could even just do a 4-minute Tabata. And if you look online at Tabatas, they give you 4 minutes of exercise, and you just follow the guy, right? Follow the girl, and she leads you through intense exercise, 4 minutes, boom, you're done. You've got your exercise in for your day, you've got your movement for the day, right? If that's what you have to do, to just get yourself started. Doesn't matter what you do, just do what moves you. Do whatever is going to get you moving. And then when you want to ramp it up to the next level, you want to restrict your sitting to no more than 3 hours a day. Right? This is 1 hour right here. You're sitting. So anybody that wants to stand, feel free to stand up at any point. So that perfect hormone storm, now we're going to unpack that social stress that's part of our lives. Chronic psychological stress coupled with the sleep deprivation. It's a problem. Oh, sleep's got nothing to do with it. It's a big deal, and here's why. Our cortisol cycles should be low at night, low in the afternoon at night, and high in the morning. But if we have unnatural schedules, it starts to turn that upside down, and then we start to have the stress and the cortisol at night when we're trying to sleep, and that just promotes more insomnia, more inflammation, anxiety. It's a downward spiral. The unnatural lighting is another part of what elevates cortisol levels. So as soon as we got the electric light, we went from naturally sleeping 9 hours a day to sleeping 8 hours a day, as soon as we got the electric light. Now, since we've gotten computers, we've gone from 8 hours a day, now we've backed it down into more like 6 hours of sleep a day, for the average for a lot of people. So when you have the unnatural lighting, it starts to have the leptin hormone go down, which means that's the satiation hormone. That's the one that turns hunger off. So if that gets turned off, then the appetite's going to turn up. The ghrelin goes up with unnatural lighting. Appetite goes up. Cortisol goes up. You start to do carb craving. And think about that. Cortisol is a stress hormone. So if suddenly there was a tiger chasing you, oh yeah, get some carbs in, because that's gonna create a bonfire for you to just run as fast as you can. Really, that's gonna be instant energy. So when we have high cortisol, we're gonna naturally go into carb craving, because if we have stress, it's gonna be something that we need to run away from. You see, it's not just a deadline. It's not just something we're waking up and worrying about. It's a tiger. That's the way our genes are designed. And then insulin, we're going to be storing the fat storage. All of that is related. So insulin levels go up when cortisol goes up. So the best practices for sleep are use the circadian rhythm as a guide, right? So the natural cycles of the day, use that as your guide. When the sun is out, wake up. When the sun goes down, start going to sleep. If you try to shoot for 8 to 9 hours, make sure the room is really dark, quiet, and comfortable. So if you got street lights outside the window, you want to get those blinds that cut out all that light. Or you could even wear a face mask if you need to. Do an e-fast. That means no electronics, no screens for some say 30 minutes. I've heard 2 hours. So just start doing less of the screen time before you go to sleep. And then the household culture, right? In our house, we go to bed early. It's hard when someone else is a night owl and someone else is a morning glory, right? So really get the household culture so you're all doing the same. All right, so how's this sounding to you, right? I'm telling you actually eat more, right? Not eat less. Eat more of the healthy things. I'm telling you to sleep more. I'm telling you to have more sweating and panting, and that can be all kinds of exercise, including the kind that might be associated with sleeping. Well, I can do this, right? That's sounding better and better. I can do that. So if we were given the ineffectiveness of the popular weight loss diets, adopting a healthy lifestyle is more appropriate for winning the war against chronic disease, too. And some resources for the paleo diet are all of these right here. So the paleodiet.com, bonfirehealth.com. Bonfire Health, I've given you that before. Anybody need that as a reminder, you can take one and pass it around. OnFireHealth.com, 39 Healthiest Habits. PerformanceMenu.com, MarksDailyApple.com, PaleoCookbooks.com, PaleoDiet.com. Those are all some great resources for making those shifts with your diet. Okay, so now I just want to circle back around to the True Cellular Detox Program details. Anybody here curious about how that program actually works? You want to hear more about it? Okay. So the program is a combination of things. It's educating you on these best practices. And I tell you, the program, it is amazing at the detail. Like every question you can think of, you go online to this program that you'll have access to as part of it, and it gives you answers. It's training you. So it's giving you the information, the articles, the research, but it's also training you. This is how to eat this food. This is how to do the fasting. This is how to get your body so it's fat burning. And then you add the supplements. So it's not just learning how to do it, it's then incorporating those healing supplements that you need for healing the cell, healing the membrane, dropping the inflammation, reestablishing the methylation pathways, like all those pieces, and through all those different phases, the prep phase, the body phase, the brain phase. And when you put all those together, that's where you get the transformation. And I will tell you that this True Cellular Detox is working wonders for people that have that weight loss resistance, but it's also amazing for people that have chronic illness and there's resistance in their body letting go of the chronic illness. Because so many of our chronic illnesses are coming from the stressors in our world, the DNA that's turned on that we don't want turned on, and our unhealthy guts. So when we start to fix all three of those things, all kinds of chronic illness starts to go away. And I'll tell you that as a chiropractor for 30 years now, over 30 years ago, I would adjust people, and for many people, just getting adjusted was all they really needed. And because the diets weren't as toxic. We didn't have glyphosate in our world, right? We didn't have the levels of stresses. We didn't have the digital stuff. We didn't have all those extra stresses. And now I'm finding we need to be more proactive, and we need to be making more conscious choices in those other categories of stresses around chemical stresses. So this is the best program I've ever seen to address the chemical stresses. That's why I'm excited about it. So when you get involved with this program, it gives you the roadmap, it gives you the healthy pyramid, right? I told you there's a healthy pyramid than the ones that we're being told. And then we just drive down into, and you get the detailed information of all these different pieces. So you get articles, you get 90-day meal plans, you get that roadmap and the pyramid, you get smoothie recipes. This is a little small, that it's hard to see, but it's actually all the different things that you then click into and dive deep on. And it just teaches you every step of the way, all the different pieces. It includes all these different articles on how that True Cellular Detox works. How did the 5 R's that I talked about in the cell, the advanced strategies for the intermittent fasting, the burst training, diet variation, regulating the blood glucose. What about these heavy metals, diabetes, thyroid, ketogenic diet, and then other articles, sleep, your brain, the glyphosate. All those different pieces that we've mentioned, it goes into detail. And then it goes into detail on all the different nutrients. So all the supplements in this program, you can learn all about those as well. It's all included. And so then you have the prep phase, and you have the body phase, and then you have the brain phase. And it's a cycle you go through with the first month, the second month, the third month. And then retesting as we go as well. So the testing is part of it too, to find out what kind of toxicities do you have, and do you have that cellular inflammation as well. So the program is, it usually costs $29.97, and because I'm just launching this, I'm making it really affordable, because I'm actually going to be going through it with you. I have some colleagues that have been working with it for a few years, and I actually know the guy that started the whole thing, and he's been developing this for 14 years. And it's really exciting. And I finally see my colleagues saying, hey, we're getting great results. I'm like, all right, I'm ready to jump in. So I'm going to be going through this program with you guys, and any of you that wants to start it. And it's reduced to $9.97. And you can even divide that up into 3 monthly payments if you need to, and I don't have that ready yet, but if you're interested and you wanna do this, just let my team know, and then, in the next week, we'll have the details of how you can move forward with it, testing and all that. It's actually on its way right now, I saw the email, shit. So I'm excited about it. So that's that part of the program that I wanted to introduce you to. And that's our evening, that's everything I wanted to cover. So tell me, did I blow your minds? Is this completely different information about weight loss than you've heard before? Right? Yeah, I mean, some things you've heard, but